It's true. A Somali fraud ring in Minnesota stole over $1 billion from Medicaid. How did this happen? Well, Medicaid programs are run by the states, which in Minnesota means the Tim Walz administration. Governor Walz and the state's other Democrats rely on Somali votes to get elected, so they decided to look the other way because they were afraid of, quote-unquote, political backlash. Don't take my word for it. That's what a Somali-American fraud investigator told the New York Times. When these scammers realized that nobody was guarding the cash register, they went gangbusters. One program designed to provide housing stabilization assistance to patients ballooned to $104 million, when 4 years ago it was projected to cost only $2.6 million. Some of these taxpayer funds may have even ended up in the hands of a Somalian terrorist group. Scary stuff. When CMS became aware of the housing program situation, Minnesota insisted it could clean up its own mess. A few months ago, it admitted it could not. So we stepped in to shut down the fraud-infested housing initiative. Today, we're taking action on more than a dozen other programs, which I've outlined in the post below. Our message to Walz is clear. Either fix this in 60 days or start looking under your couch for spare change, because we are done footing the bill for your incompetence. This administration will never stop fighting to protect the vulnerable Americans who rely on these programs and the taxpayers who fund them. We're going to crush waste, fraud, and abuse.
Feeding hungry children in the Somali community. A group, a nonprofit run by some people with Somali ancestry. The name of the nonprofit was called Feeding Our Future. Feeding Our Future. Feeding Our Future went to the welfare authorities in the state of Minnesota, which of course was administering federal taxpayer money. The program started out small. When they started it in 2020, these crooks started it in 2020, they said, we only need $2.6 million. But then in 2021, they said we need $21 million. And in the following years, they said we need $42 million the next year, then $74 million to feed, or rather to house the homeless, then $104 million a year, not the total scheme, a year. There's just one problem. None of the money was going for housing. None of the money was going to help people who were homeless. These providers and this nonprofit that was coordinating it just put the money in their pocket. But there's more. They came up with a third scheme. This one makes you want to throw up in a potted plant. This one's centered around autistic children. Once again, in this third program, a group of providers, supposedly medical providers, got together and they went to the welfare authorities in Minnesota and said, we need money to help autistic children. You say, well, that's a wonderful thing to do. And then these providers, once the welfare department at the state government in Minnesota gave them the okay, they went out and started recruiting autistic children. You say, well, okay, we have to get the word out somehow. But they couldn't find very many autistic children. So they started going to parents in the Somali community and saying, can we call your child autistic? Can we certify that your child is autistic? If you'll let us do that, we'll pay you a bribe. Anywhere from $400 to $1,500 a child. Now, once again, the program, it didn't start big. These were sophisticated crooks. and its leader was a woman by the name of Asha Farban Hassan. She was also in, by the way, on the feeding of the children scam as well. And as best we can tell, they approached parents only in the Somali community. But once again, they couldn't find enough autistic children, so they bribed the many parents in the community, gave them money to certify that their children were autistic. In the first year, they were clever. They only asked for $3 million. The second year, in 2019, they asked for $54 million. Then in 2020, they went up to $77 million. And then in 2021, they really got greedy. They went to $183 million. And in 22, $280 million. And in 2023, $400 million. All total, in these three fraud schemes, these crooks stole $1 billion of taxpayer money. The rank and file employees in the welfare office started getting suspicious when the claims went up, and they contacted Feeding Our Future. And they said, hey, what's going on here? You know, we're going to start cutting off these claims because it's getting a little bit expensive. And you know what Feeding Our Future did? They threatened the employees. They said, if you cut off our money, they sent them an email, and they did it by phone. They told the state agency that failing to promptly approve new applicants from minority-owned businesses would result in a lawsuit, feeding accusations of racism that would be sprawled across the news. Feeding Our Futures went to the state and said, if you stop giving us this money, we're going to call you racist and we're going to sue you. And you don't want to be in the news. Now, here's what, and you say, well, why didn't the employees do something? They did. They told the people higher up, the people with the flags in their office. And you know what they did? Nothing. You know why? Well, here's what the legislative auditor in Minnesota said. He said that the threat of litigation and the negative press affected how the state politicians use their regulatory power. And here's what a fraud investigator in the Attorney General's office said. She said, there is a perception that, I'm quoting now, that forcefully tackling this issue would cause political backlash from the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc for Democrats. And in fact, one of the other witnesses in the fraud investigation said, look, I told the prosecutors, let me just give you a cold dish of truth. The 80,000 voting bloc of folks with Somali ancestry, you got to have their votes to win in Minneapolis. And if you're a Democrat and you can't win Minneapolis, you can't win in the state. So the politicians did nothing. Governor Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on. That's the employees talking. Hoping for a partnership and stopping fraud, but no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers, using monitoring, using threats, using repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of partnership, we got the full weight of retaliation by Tim Walz and an indifferent mainstream media. It's scary, isolating, and left us wondering who we can return to. That these $1 billion schemes were cooked up by leaders in the Somali community in Minneapolis and in Minnesota. And it is a fact that most of the businesses that participated in this fraud and this thievery were run by people of Somali ancestry. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad. That's just a fact. And I don't think we ought not to talk about it. And it is a fact that the kickbacks paid to parents to allow their children to be signed up as autistic, in order to get the federal taxpayer money, the parents were of Somali ancestry. It doesn't give me any pleasure to say that, but it is a fact. And it is a fact that the politicians, not the employees, the rank and file employees and the welfare offices, but the politicians in Minnesota let this happen. It is disgusting, Mr. President. Disgusting. We're trying to put together a budget right now. And we've got state officials in Minnesota, because they wanted votes, that are allowing people in their state who are crooks to steal $1 billion from the American taxpayer. Money that could have gone to people who really were homeless, and children who really were hungry, and kids who through no fault of their own really were autistic, instead of stolen, a portion of which allegedly was sent to a terrorist organization in Somalia. Man, these people ought to all be put in jail, including the politicians.
Yeah, so based on what we have found so far, we believe that the Somali fraud operation in Minnesota is the single greatest theft of taxpayer dollars through welfare fraud in American history. We believe that we have only scratched the very top of the surface of how deep this goes. And you're familiar with all the scams with pretending that children have autism who are not in fact autistic, with pretending to enroll people in food programs when in fact nobody was ever enrolled, and engaging in massive fraud, lying, and theft and grift on a scale we've never seen before in American history. The total bill, the total tab for this is going to be far beyond the numbers we've already seen reported. We believe the state government is fully complicit in this scheme, and we believe that what we are going to uncover is going to shock the American people. Look, based on the records that we already have, and this is a significant undercount, by the way, 75% of the Somali population in Minnesota is on welfare. But that's likely a significant undercount of just how much of a financial burden the Somali refugee population is imposing on this country. This scandal is going to rock the core of Minnesota politics and American politics. We are going to be able to show through whether it be willful blindness, whether it be deliberately turning the other way, or whether it be direct knowledge, we are going to show how Democrat politicians, Democrat bureaucracies, Democrat political systems, and the Somali refugee population ripped off the American people, stole countless taxpayer dollars, and engaged in scams that boggle the mind, scams that we can scarcely even conceive of or imagine in their brazenness. This truly underscores the extent to which the Democrat Party has used migration as a weapon against the American people to gain political power at the expense of American citizens, stealing their money, stealing their votes, stealing their sovereignty. This is going to be case in point for the argument that President Trump has made about why we must stop mass third-world migration into this country. It is a tool the Democrat Party has used to rob the American people blind. It's been federal law since the 1880s that you have to, number one, you have to be financially self-sufficient. You can't be on welfare. And number two, your sponsor has to sign a legally binding document promising that the alien they sponsor will not use welfare, and that if they do, the sponsor will pay 100% of the cost that is owed to the taxpayer. That has not happened once here, Sean. The American people were robbed, and we're going to make sure that those responsible are held accountable.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.